Hello, it's me, Jay, your DM. I use he, him.
Hello, it is me, Air. I too use he and him.
I'm Jerika. I use she, her.
Hi, I'm Mazz. I use they, them, and I just turn up every week at the last minute, not prepared anymore, because who needs notes?
And this is Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom. We made it, another week. Can you believe it?
I'm just hoping some of you have got wisdom, because I didn't bring any, sorry.
My mother told me to always bring enough for the whole class. So I've got fresh piping hot wisdom here for everybody. Just
check out the teacher's pet.
Yeah, I mean, listen. You don't polish that apple, you don't get that A+, and then you don't get to go to Disneyland.
I took a flat 10 on wisdom and int. I really wanted to boost Constitution, so you gotta make some sacrifices somewhere.
I managed to just roll badly on every stat, I think. Welcome
That's
to me
not
in a
true.
good mood.
You have dexterity. I've seen your textile work. That requires finesse.
If you see me try to walk, I fall over my own feet. That's not dexterity.
When you live in America, you gotta make sure your con score is on point, because it can get real ugly for you otherwise.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that the healthcare system is really bad.
Oh, okay. For sure.
Guys, this episode topic seems like it's going to be really dark. Anyway, American healthcare system.
I put out the search. I summoned a flock of familiars. We found the entrance, and we're going to delve into a dungeon crawl. Anyway, my dungeon crawl today is World Anvil. I've been doing a lot of preparation for a new campaign. So I've been using something called Home Brewery for a while to have my little setting guide in, and I send that out to new players whenever I play with them. And it's nice, I like it, but it's a little difficult to just edit one section of it because it's all formatted and you have to do page breaks. And so if I move one paragraph somewhere else, then suddenly the page breaks aren't lined up correctly and I have to move articles around and it's just a mess. So my player won in a contest of some kind, a free year subscription to World Anvil, and they don't DM, so they gave it to me. And so I had this subscription at a pro tier of World Anvil, so I was like, well, I'll just try it out. And at first, it was really, really intimidating because World Anvil is this tool that is specifically designed for your role-playing game to put your setting document stuff into. So it's got specifically formatted. It's basically like a wiki that you make for your setting.
But for yourself, not for you and other people.
Well, no, you can give it to your players so they can see stuff, and you can hide articles and have like DM side stuff that's just for you, and then player stuff that's for player facing content. So it's really great for like onboarding new people into my setting really quickly compared to like a 10-page document that seems very intimidating. Sending them something like a timeline of events is much less intense, I suppose. Or like 1-page article that gives specifics about the location that they're going to. And then if they want to click around and like see some other stuff, they can, but they don't have to. And it's not information hidden in a wall of text.
Yeah, I would say it's more like a database because you're creating and generating the content, and a wiki's more like everybody's editing it. And I assume
that's true.
Players can't really edit it.
Yeah, the wiki base element is mostly how it like interacts, like how you click around it. But I totally get database is definitely a more accurate descriptor. But yeah, it's been super fun, and all of the articles. So say you generate a new character. It has a list of questions that you might answer for a specific character. What year were they born? What year did they die? What's their... the first thing you can enter is always like an essay or a prose, they call it prose. So like it's just where you dump like this is who this character is kind of spiel. And then below that it's like interesting questions. Like for countries, it's like what's the country's motto? What's the country's leading export? What's its import? What's its law like? What's the style of governance? And it's kind of interesting to have all these questions because it helps you think about these sorts of things, about the place that you're going to. And I think it will ultimately make it a more polished product. I kind of wish that I'd started with World Anvil, because I think it's much less intimidating when you're doing like one article to completion. It's much worse when you have a lot of stuff that you've now got to retrofit into this database, and it just takes a long time to get all the stuff that you've made for your setting. But now that I'm pretty much on the other side of it, it took about a week and a half, and I really don't regret it, because I'm probably going to get years of use out of it, and it's much easier to edit than the home brewery document. So yeah, that's just something I've been using.
Has it been worthwhile for you transferring some of the information from your original doc to World Anvil because you get a second pass at it, or you can correct or update information as you move it over?
Oh my gosh, I found so much conflicting information in different sections where I've like amended or changed something after the fact, or like I've gone and fleshed something out. And then the fleshed down information I added conflicts with an earlier, like just high overview pass of the topic. So like here I say Valestria is like this, but in my game I've played 2 games in Valestria since then. So I have all this new information about Valestria that never really got retrofitted for this. I just found like so much of my stuff. And not only that, on a more personal note, it also has spell check in it. So that's been very helpful. I found out that I cannot spell at all. I mean, I knew that about myself, but this has been a grim reminder that I am truly terrible at grammar. But yeah, it's been great. I really enjoyed it. It's been really helpful to refresh myself on my own setting. Like all this stuff that I made up 2 years ago that I forgot about. And now I'm getting like fresh eyes on. And a lot of stuff has just changed. So
cool. I am hastily putting together some resources for helping new DMs start DMing. And one thing I found was tetra-cube.com/D&D/care-gen-HTML, which is the character generator, the D&D character generator from TetraCube. I really like this tool because it's very helpful, I think, as far as social goes. So for me, it's very hard to just think of people like off the top of my head. And there are so many different options when you're creating NPCs for characters to interact with. There's a cool button that says generate character. And when you generate your character, you can select which source books you want the information to come from. So if you just want Player's Handbook or DM's Guide or whatever, like you can limit it to just that, which is great. So I have generated here Oddhilda Aranor, who is a hill dwarf monk, Way of the Kensei clan crafter. She's a female and she's 121 years old. And then it gives some really interesting additional information. So, bond flaw, secrets, trinkets, masters. So one of the most interesting things is your monastery is built beside a volcanic system of hot springs, geysers, and sulfur pools. Or geysers, if you're Mazz.
Thank you for the British pronunciation. Appreciate it.
You regularly received visits from Azure traders. I also really like her flaw, which is arrogance, and trinket, a glass jar containing lard with a label that reads Griffin grease. And, as Jay just discovered, after the character, there is a art source for the character art, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you like the basic features, you can also click randomize card, and it will give you it will change up all of the information about the character. So
yeah, I'm always really happy when something is inclusive enough to include non-binary genders, and this one does, which is awesome. I was like clicking it with the fear, and then one came up, and I was like, "Oh my word, that's great!"
I got one that has a terrifying art, but all of the stuff about them is really nice. Ideal, sincerity. There's no good in pretending to be something I'm not. Bond. I protect those that cannot protect themselves. Defining event. I stole from the corrupt merchant to help the poor. And yet, the visual is this like terrifying bone-clad bugbear.
So, but that could be interesting, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, yeah.
There's a contrast there between what the PCs might expect and what is actually the case. Some irony.
Stop judging based on looks.
Oh, wait, that was Fjord art.
I have absolutely found the single best piece of bard art ever created. Look at this turtle.
Very delightful.
Look at this turtle.
You realize we're describing images now, and our audience is going to have a real hard time with
This
this.
turtle is a bard. It has a very flouncy purple hat with a red feather in it. It also has a cello that it might be spinning in a jazzy sort of way. It definitely has a sword embedded in its turtle shell. It has a belt that's going all the way around its midsection, including like over the top of its belt. Or over the top of its shell, purple pants that match its hat with possibly patches, and some scrolls and stuff. Very, yes. The face says, I'm a turtle, but the body's like, I'm ready to party.
It is a truly delightful turtle bard named Uhak.
Or Ook.
Thank you for including the British pronunciation.
Or okay.
Yeah, I think his name is okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Which is probably what every bard should always say. Hey, can you play this? Okay. Hey, can you get out of here before we stab you?
Would be a good
Okay.
Kenku name.
Yeah. Oh, it would be a good Kinku name. Yeah. Okay.
I think I gotta build okay later.
I have finally, in the brave steps of my DMJ, dipped my toe into homebrew.
Oh.
I just had a nip and I couldn't get enough.
Oh,
Yeah, so I created my very first homebrewed subclass for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I don't know how we got onto this topic, but for some reason I started talking about Equilibrium, which is a movie from like late 90s, early 2000s. It's basically 1984 meets like Hard Boiled. It's like dystopian society, but also there's a lot of cool gun martial arts and whatnot. It's not a cinematic masterpiece, but I decided to make the clerics from that world, which are like gun-toting assassins, into a class. And so I did. And I did the designing thing and elicited feedback. Thank you to Jay and Matt. Thank you to the Dungeons and Dragons Beyond Discord for their help. And yeah, it's available on our Twitter if you decide that you would like to get a waft of my bullshit.
It's really cool too. It's mechanically it's quite sound and it's really interesting to play. A lot of on-point thematic ability.
Jay, what do you do when you want to play the thing that you made that you're certain no DM will ever let you use?
Who says? I think you've got a lot of DMs in your life who are okay with.
I have a lot of
random
DMs in my
stuff.
life who know my min-max bullshit, and I don't think will ever trust anything I have made.
Well, in that case, do like I do, be a DM and give it to an NPC.
Hey, problem solved.
That's it. Besides the dungeon crawl today, we have a topic at hand, and this is your topic, so I'll let you intro it, Jerika.
Sometimes the world is terrible. And instead of using D&D as escapism, you want to put that really terrible stuff straight into your D&D.
There shall be no escape.
We'll talk about how D&D can possibly be used to exorcise feelings, perhaps, of inability to affect the problems of the world or change anything or help anything, but put it in your D&D so you can do something about it.
Yeah, you can. The escapism part is the part where you can actually fix these problems. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
So I am deep in Ghosts of Saltmarsh, up to my I don't know, neck, I guess.
Can't go much deeper.
Neck deep in a ghost.
Yeah, for sure. And so I am also taking this material and using it for educational purposes. But I thought it would be cool. So Ghost of Saltmarsh is a Greyhawk setting, but you can also kind of transplant it, you know, in other places too. So there's a suggestion in the book to, if you want to do a Forgotten Realms game, Saltmarsh can exist sort of south of the Mire of Dead Men. South of the Mire of Dead Men. And I thought that was cool. So if you don't know, Saltmarsh is a town on the sea. There's like a bay next door and some other things, but a lot of the adventures in the book relate to the seaside and things like that. So the first adventure, spoilers, involves a haunted house on the edge of cliffs that lead to the ocean. And in the process of playing, you discover there's a smuggling operation going on with boats and things like that. I thought this would be a perfect setting to jam some climate change bullshit in. There is a point at which, again, spoilers, the PCs discover that the Sahuagin are sort of amassing an arsenal to attack the lizard folk and their allies. And I think it would be a really good opportunity to sort of start hinting that the Sahuagin are having a problem with their way of life and things are different than they have been for a while. So what I did is I wrote a list of things that climate change affects, such as the rising sea level, bleached reefs, warmer, more acidic waters, stronger hurricanes, you know, all that kind of stuff. Perhaps increase in infection rates due to, I don't know, releases of stuff from glaciers. This is all just stuff I'm making up now.
Sure.
And increase in the hatching of female reptiles, and decreases
Which I believe
in marine
Sahuagin
species.
are. I believe Sahuagin are reptiles, right?
They are fish-based.
Like shark people.
Yeah, they would obviously interact with ocean reptiles, and might actually depend on those species for survival. So, you know, over the course of 7+ adventures in Ghost of Saltmarsh, you can start hinting at, oh, you know, this smuggling ring had to move up the beach because the tide rose. You know, it doesn't move that fast. You know, maybe there's an old smuggling ring. But, you know, things like that. I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Well, like you said, the storm's getting stronger.
Right.
That might wreck their old base, force them into this new location.
Yep.
Yeah, there's lots of ways you can use those sorts of elements. Like the bleached reef might not be populated by the same kind of fish that the Sahuagin normally hunt on.
Yeah.
So now they're getting desperate and having to face off against the native people. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a point where you sort of interact with the lizard folk who have a stronghold like off the coast, like on a big pyre. And, you know, they would probably see some of this. And being lizards themselves, maybe they are experiencing some of the...
Yeah, like there's like suddenly a population of mostly females.
Yeah, right. So anyway, I think that hinting and hinting and hinting, you reach a point where, you know, it's no longer the Sahuagin that are the actual problem. The problem is climate change. You know, how do you make that into a satisfying fight, if you will? You know, you can always have, like, the god or deity of climate change problems.
Well, I mean, like, the source of the climate change could be some sort of mystic artifact or some sort of item, something like that. in the nearby climate that's causing things to take on a different turn.
Or an entity.
And because of that, it could be happening much faster than it did in our world too.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, something's there that shouldn't be there, or is, has moved recently from a different plane or whatever here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it adds a different layer to this Whoigan than they get in the adventure, where they're just sort of basically evil shark people for no real reason other than that they are evil shark people.
Now they have a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Now they are, fighting for their survival in a way that's destructive to the survival of others. And that's very realistic. That's a very real conflict. My home is destroyed. I have to invade your home because I don't have one anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's the villain here? Well, it's whatever force pushed them out of their home. It's interesting, yeah.
Yeah. I think Air has to state out loud this pun he has posted in chat so that we can all point and laugh at him. It's also on Twitter.
Why does everyone in D&D fear class action lawsuit from fish folk? Because they're afraid they will sue again.
They will sue again.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very proud
Thanks.
of you.
I'm proud of me too.
I'm not.
What other sorts of big, terrible world issues do we want to
Well, I was
conquer
gonna
and
say,
defeat?
if you're taking an environmental bent on a setting or whatnot, there is good precedent for that in D&D with Athos, the world from Dark Sun, which is super 90s insofar as the world has been used up environmentally by the sorcerer kings and one sorcerer queen that rule the city-states of Arthas, and that the magic that they practice, which is very powerful, just drains the life force from the planet. And as such, Athos has been left as kind of a barren desert wasteland in between these city-states, which are luxurious and maintained by the magical powers of these overlords. So yeah, there's a lot of that environmental impact due to the baddies in that particular setting.
Yeah, would you say Dark Sun is sort of a Mad Max? Like Mad Max could sizzle in there?
It definitely,
So that has a lot of themes of...
I've definitely had that feel when I've looked at the setting, for sure.
Yeah.
It's got that whole deserty, water scarcity vibe.
There are, kind of tribal, what's the word I'm looking for? Roving bands of individuals. Elves actually tend to be kind of the group that roams the wastes and are fairly savage, for lack of a better term, vicious. I mean, they're on the edge of survival, so they're very take no prisoners in the setting. And yeah, they roam the wastes. They are not part of, quote unquote society or civilization.
That's interesting because, when I think of elves, I think of, Tolkien elves. And a lot of those are wood elves. And so they sort of are they have symbiosis with the forest. And when there's no forest, what is your society look
And that's
like?
I think if I remember correctly, that's exactly what Dark Sun was trying to drive at, that the elves are kind of driven to a sense of, because the world has been so sundered, that their connection to nature has been ripped away from them, and it's had a huge, negative impact on their society, which is why they've just become these kind of roving bands moving about the deserts and, pillaging from whatever travelers they can.
Matt Colville,
Cha-ching.
Cha-ching, has a quote that is pretty relevant to this, and I think is relevant to the kinds of issues that I work into my game, which is people want the right to be a psychology, but in reality they're a sociology, whether they like it or not.
Parse that for us, please.
Sure. So basically, it's Matt Colville's understanding of human civilization, and I kind of agree, that everybody wants to think that they have independent factors that made them who they are, that the conditions of their birth and maybe their upbringing is what makes a person who they eventually are. So if a person is successful, it's because they had the right kind of stuff inside of them to be successful and the right upbringing. But what Matt posits is that everybody is actually the product of society, of a sociology. That, sociology can limit your growth potential or limit your ability to have outreach, limit your voice, and can limit you as a person from reaching your maximum potential. And sociology can enhance and empower people who maybe have a lesser potential than you because they're under the right social group and they're in the right social situation. So everybody is a sociology. In other words, everybody is a product of the society that they exist in, and not a psychology, that your individual mindset and mentality is less to do with your total effect on the world than maybe the society that you're born into. And I mean, obviously both of them have an effect, but in the end, nobody is free of the society that they were raised in. Nobody escapes the society that they're raised in completely. They're either benefiting from it or they're being hindered by it in some way that is unseen. And that's one of the topics that Matt Colville covers in their sociology series on their channel. And it's just a cool quote that they said that has always kind of stuck with me. And I think that that's probably something I cover a lot in my games, where I have social stratification and different social groups that interact, and I want the players to be able to subvert those and act outside of them, so they're able to but when you go into a city, the threats in the city are not necessarily a big strong monster, but it's more the machinations of different individuals within the city and how they can kind of create unnecessary strife. There's lots of high-ranking individuals who unleash hell on the world because of their philosophy or ideals, but it's totally unnecessary and it doesn't advance anything except for maybe just their personal ego or ideology. So like in the game y'all played, there was the headmaster who thought that they knew what needed done, and so they created this whole plot that you all unfolded.
Red Oni, Blue Oni.
You all unfolded the plot and found the mastermind behind it, but none of it was necessary. Nothing he did necessarily benefited anyone. He had an idea of an abstract long-term benefit to the world, but it didn't really manifest. And in the end, all he did was just hurt a lot of people. And those are the kinds of stories that I run, where the one person's selfish desire sets off a chain of events that are destructive. And the heroes are heroic because they take the action that's better for the world at large. That kind of stuff. It interests me. The mesh of social stratas, how they can grind against each other.
I was gonna say the idea of social strata as a driving force for a campaign is very good, because there's a lot of elements of classism kind of baked into the game. There are things like a low-level cleric can feed and create potable water for an entire village, and yet there's poverty in a lot of campaign settings. Or if you have the diamonds, you can just never die. If you are wealthy, you're immortal. So there's a lot of those things that kind of undergird the game, and I think any one of those could serve as a really good or interesting crux for creating dramatic tension amongst the social strata in a given civilization, and create a central conflict to drive the whatever narrative you want to push through.
Do you remember in Tomb of Annihilation, there was a couple streams, well, it was the whole season, where resurrection didn't work?
Yeah, the death curse.
How many rich people were pissed off that their diamonds didn't work?
How many adventuring parties were funded by super wealthy people who are basically liches at this point? Lich the rich. Eat the lich.
Nope, not fresh.
Mentioning liches, while we're talking about, our social justice smorgasbord that we are, a friend of mine, one of the players from my old campaign, is friends with a rabbi who was explaining to her about
Oh, yeah.
the history of liches.
Yeah, I had a sense that, or someone mentioned that, like, the notion of, like, a
Yeah, it's a
phylactery
Jewish-
has its roots in
It's a
Judaism.
Jewish thing. There are people in the Jewish community who are quite rightly upset about, the fact that liches just slip under the radar and that people get upset about other things. And so I haven't got the details of what the explanation was because my player was about to catch a flight. But they gave me a link to I don't know if it's an adventure or a game. It's on Folklore Jam on itch.io. It's called If I Were a Lich Man, and it's by someone called Lucian Khan. And it's about peaceful Jewish liches resisting against the lawful good paladins. And because this rabbi was speaking about the idea of using liches in a peaceful way, people who study deep into their religion and act as wise people to their communities. And, I like subverting tropes anyway. And it does feel a bit... Stuff like this is the sort of thing that gets forgotten. It's like... We forget that a lot of D&D has been pulled from folklore, and we don't necessarily think about what we're ripping out of people's heritages when using these things, because they've been so mutated and transformed in the whole process of making them into the game.
Appropriative.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just something that came to my mind.
Golems.
But yeah, golems are Jewish as well, yeah.
Because like the clay golem is the only one like that's the folklore is that they're made of clay. Everything else like the iron and stone and stuff like that, I just call them like automaton or
Construct.
yeah, constructs. Yeah, like there's no real even reason. Like they're not even mythology wise like what you're playing, so just use a different word.
I really like the idea of like, because liches get a bad rap, I guess because they're undead, but are all undead things by their very nature evil? Like, could you not just have a lich as it is conceptualized in, say, D&D, that is like, a kind and benevolent, wise and, anciently learned, NPC that can help creatures out? And like, you're a lich. Oh, let's not get on about that.
You're gonna search for lich to see if there's any non-evil aligned.
To see if there are
liches in the
any
game.
friendly liches out there.
No,
Evil,
it's been the
evil,
stance
evil.
of
Great.
wizards that
Isn't there that lich in Curse of Strahd? The one that has been a lich for so long that they have lost all grasp of reality, which then leads me on to, let's stop using the wrong words for mental health problems. That's just something I'm really passionate about at the moment.
I was talking with a coworker the other day, and we were trying to define a situation as frustrating and not cool, and the word we landed on was lame. And that wasn't good at all.
No, that's a very bad word to be using. And it's so hard because it's so ingrained in the language.
Yeah.
And we don't even notice sometimes. And I've been training myself very hard to pick up on things like that.
Well, the way that you describe things and in a lot of ways, DMs are role models. Maybe not at every table. But I think they set a sort of a threshold of behavior or expectations of behavior. And so it's important, I think, to choose your words wisely.
Yeah, I definitely agree. A lot of Dungeons and Dragons is played with people that we don't know that well. At least mine is. So it can be really challenging to know what is going to hurt someone unless you know them really well. And so being careful about your language is about more than just social justice warrioring that some people might dislike. It's just about being empathetic. And knowing that you never know when you might use a phrase that gets somebody in a way that you didn't expect. So you've got to be careful.
If I may, I think I have found our friendly lich, Exthanter, who is in one of the Amber Temple in Curse of Strahd. And yes, he has forgotten all of his spells and all of his memories. But if you use Greater Restoration on him twice, He gets back his spells and his memories, but is so thankful for that, he gives you all the passwords to all the locked doors in the temple and provides you all the information pertaining to Strahd that you would need. So there you go. There's a friendly lich. If you help them, they help you.
Although, if you've ever seen if you've seen the list of dark gifts in the Amber Temple, that might not be a kind thing to do.
He doesn't even remember his name. It's actually very sad. Well, that's been Insight Check. We would like to thank a number of individuals. First, we would like to thank Vinsvept for the use of our theme song, Never Stand Alone, off the album Putting the Days to Bed.
No!
It's a great tune. You can get it where all great tunes are downloaded. Thank you, Vinsvept. We would like to thank our friend Byrne at Burnham with 3 M's.
I miss you.
Good old Byrne.
That was the 3 M's.
They created all the lovely art and social media branding for our, podcast, which is the thing that you're listening to now. Thank you. Which brings me to thanking you again, I guess, for listening. If you could give us a like and subscribe and whatever the full array of stars is on the particular podcast app you are using.
It's probably 5.
Well of tea.
Yeah. Just, get the word out there. Let the people know, hey, these people talk on the internet and you should give them a listen. That would be swell. Thank you so much.
This is going so well.
Anywho, answering your cues from our collective A's, this
Was.
Inside.
Check.
Check.
Stay tuned for D&D Roulette.
Oh, spoilers.
Coming up after these messages.
Character's legs.
Leggies.
Leggies. The leggies.
There are no legs, only leggies.
All shall be leggies.
And none shall be leggies.